Hi, I'm Darren from MRT. If you want to see me build this half-built ship, paint it and weather it from turning it from this to this. Gee, that didn't take very long, did it? To give you some sort of idea of the sheer size of this boat, it's it's actually 20 inches long and about 4.5 inches wide. So what I ended up doing, step number one, is washing the boat down with hot soapy water just to get the finger marks, fingerprints and oils off it. Then I just drilled small holes into the bottom with the dowels. I don't know if you can see that. So what that actually does, so when I'm going through and painting this, I don't have to keep touching the hull. I can just move it around on the dowels. So they're about 1/4 inch thickness, about 4 inches long in a extruded foam base there. So that's step number one. Looking forward to doing this build. Let's get back to the bench.
So the first thing I've done there, you can see I've painted it with an undercoat, just a flat black. So this is the color I'm going to go in with. It's Vallejo light gray 71.50. So I'm going to look at going in with the airbrush. So this is not a tutorial on how to airbrush. So I'm using probably 25 to 20 pounds of pressure, and I'm giving it a good old thin down. So the consistency we're looking to get is sort of a milky consistency. You can see I've put the airbrush thinner in there and just want to just sort of holding onto the sides of the coupler for the airbrush. But then it sort of just makes its own way under gravity and rolls itself down. And I find that's the ultimate viscosity for the airbrush. Now, I always go in and practice on a piece of cardboard or something. So you can see I've just probably got a little bit too much air there. So I will dial it back. And it's just a matter of getting the right sort of consistency, the right viscosity for the application. Here I'm going in with the airbrush. So you can see what I'm doing. That's a 2-action airbrush. So I'm sort of coming in and off and just doing a little section at a time, depressing the trigger, the paint releases, and just going backwards and forwards in light sort of coats. So you're not going to be able to cover this all in one application. You can sort of see around the front of the hull there, I did get a little bit of splatter, probably because I had probably not the viscosity of the paint quite right. I must admit, this wasn't exactly an easy hull to paint. It's got a lot of little nooks and crannies there. So what I found, I initially had it on those mounts with the dowels. I took it off, put it on that like a lazy Susan there. So it's just a matter of methodically working your way around the hull as the best you can, getting in all the angles, but just making sure you do let it dry thoroughly between coats. So that's the finished paint job on the hull. So it's actually quite a hard hull to photograph, so it's so large. Just for information, that took about 3 bottles of the Vallejo paint to do the full coverage. The next portion of this build is how I did the pilot. So it's not actually how I built it, but how I weathered and colored up. So to give you some sort of idea, there's probably 25 to 30 separate resin and brass detail parts on that pilot. So this is the pilot being painted up here. So I've got it on the Lazy Susan again. So the color I'm using there is a Vallejo Arctic White. And it's just a matter of exactly the same as I did before, building up the colors over various different stages and various different passes with the airbrush. So the next portion here is the wheelhouse or the bridge. So I'm using exactly the same Vallejo color with the airbrush with the same techniques I have been using before. So the next part of the build here, we're going to go in and start doing some of the contrast colors. So we've got a soft black there by Americana. So that color's sort of a sort of blacky grey sort of, but it's in a matte. So just going to go through and paint up all the air intakes on the pilot there. So you can go on with a myriad of colours there. I've just chosen the soft black. You can obviously go red colours, which is quite traditional on ship. So I'm making a wash for the pilot here out of Little Birdie, which is a charcoal colour. So I water it down quite significantly. You'll see shortly how I apply it to the pilot. In the interest of keeping this video under 2 hours long, so you'll see the front of the pilot, I've actually painted an ochre colour. So it's just a matter of just trying to emulate that wood. So what I'm doing now, I'm just got that very, very thin wash on, and I'm just getting it in all the nooks and crannies just to highlight and gunge up those wood panels. You can see I'm using a reasonably thin flat brush there. It's about 1/2 inch thickness. So I start going on that door. I'm sort of thinking that's probably not such a great idea. So I go to sort of a number 1 or number 2 brush. That's just so I can get into the nooks and crannies without spreading all that very thin wash all over the white walls where I'm going to do some more rusting effects. Not quite sure what happened to my footage for the hull, but what I've actually done there, it's a 3-tone hull, so you'll see along the bottom there is like a little red line, and above that is a sort of a darker green color. So all I did with that was mask it up with painter's masking tape, go back through with the airbrush. Just be mindful that's obviously got some weathering on it, so that's not the true color of the technique I've just explained. Now let's start gunging up and weathering the hull. So we've just gone in with an Americana warm white there with a sort of a flat, but a harder bristle brush, because what we're trying to do is replicate some scratching down the side of the hull here. So as you can see, it's a dry brushing technique. So I get most of the paint off, and then I do it in long vertical strokes. As you can see, I've just got a little bit too much paint there, but if you find that's what you've done, you can always just wipe it off with your finger or with a damp cloth. So it's just a matter of working your way along the hull in vertical strokes. So you'll see some of these scratches along here. I'm not quite actually sure what happened here. So when I primed it with I obviously washed the hull to start with, then I primed it. Then when I used painter's tape, to get all these different layers in the colors, I pulled the tape up and it's obviously pulled some of the paint out. So what I'm probably going to try to do is incorporating these as sort of natural wear and tear on the boat. So watch this space regarding that. So that's the initial color of the hull. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back through and just tone down some of these white highlights which are emulating scratches and the like on the boat. So it's a dry brushing type technique again, so it's just a matter of getting a little bit on your brush, getting rid of most of it off on a paper towel or something similar. What I might actually go through and do is use a bit of a thicker brush, so a thicker bristled brush. Quite hard to videotape this build, but anyway, you can sort of see, if I can hold that without dropping it, sort of the color variation there. Now you can see before I had a rather large patch just here. So what I went back through is with a gray, like a darker type gray, and I just sponged over it. Now it's actually really difficult to sort of photograph that or videotape that. So you can sort of see I'm just slowly building up the colors through there. Now I don't think I want to go much bolder than that because it's getting just a little bit too much color there. So what we're going to look at doing, we've gone through and done all the scratching type medium along the hull here. So what I'm going to do now is go in with the same brush, which is a number 8 and a bit more solid bristle. So what that's going to do is just give us a bit more of a starker line. So what I'm going to go in with first of all is just a ever so little bit of, which is the red primer, which is going to denote rust that's probably been there for just a little bit longer than everything else. So we don't really need a lot of this. So it's a bit more of a dry brushing technique. And then it's just a matter of very quick vertical strokes. And you'll notice I start from the top. So what that's actually gonna indicate is a heavier rust at the top, and as the water splashes down, there's barely any of this color on the brush at this point in time. And if you find you've gone in just a little bit too hard, you notice that I picked up just a small sponge before, and it's just a matter of we can just wipe that out before it dries. So you can sort of see the effect
that I'm sort of getting there. It's just feeding into those scratches and rusting and just general wear and tear on the side of that hull. So you can see how I've gone in way too heavy just there. So it's just a matter before it dries, you can just wipe it off. The next colour I'm going to go in is with the next sort of what I'm going to call the next sort of severity or next colour of the rust. So that's just a slightly lighter brown, a little less reddy tone than before. Same brush as before, same sort of technique. Crack on, I've got 3 more colours to do and I'll show you what it looks like at the other end.
So the next bit I'm going to look at doing is just adding some weathering and gunge coming from the portal. So you can sort of see there near where I've got that sponge, how I'm doing that. So what I'm actually doing, just using a black watered down wash, and then what I'm doing is just a thin brush and just dragging it down. So what you then do is, looks quite horrendous because it's so black right now, but what you'll do, you'll go back in with a sort of a thicker brush and just tease out the edges. So here I am now. So whatever sort of paint you're using, I'm using acrylic, so I'm just doing that with water. So what you're actually doing is just fading it out and toning it down in a vertical line. So it's important that it is vertical or at the angle that you think that the water and gunge is going to come out of those portals. So you can just see I'm just teasing the edges with it, and that just tones it down through the hull. So through each sort of brush stroke I'm doing as well, just with the water, I'm sort of wiping on a paper towel to the side because you don't want to take that colour back through. So you can see how that sort of tones down nicely. It's sort of darker at the top and you sort of grade it down where it's much sort of lighter in tone, more opaque towards the bottom. So the next step here, I'm just going through with a sponge with some of those rust colours and just dabbing it on various positions around the hull and the gunnels and the like, just to sort of start weathering up the top of the deck area of the boat. I won't go through all the colours, but it's just a matter of building up those colours ever so slightly. As you can see, it's no real rhyme or reason, it's just rather random, but sort of maybe look at some photos in the real world I should say, just to see how that rust would play out.
So I've since come up with a new little tool here. So just some disposable eye makeup applicators that I stole from my wife's boudoir. So it's just a matter of same sort of thing. It's just a sponging technique, but what it allows you to do, it allows you to get right into all these nooks and crannies on these combings just a little bit easier. So same technique, you sort of go in there, get your brush, and then just dab it in there. So that side's pretty well just about done, I think. Now I've got to do a little bit of tidy up where I've gone overzealous.
So the last step, I go over all the little nooks and crannies with Vallejo dark wash. So you can sort of see where I'm pointing there with that very fine brush, what I've started doing. So it's a very, very watered down sort of dark rust colour. It's just a matter of going in, and it acts like a bit of a capillary action. You sort of will go in and the liquid will sort of find its own level, go around corners and the like, and just sit in all the low parts, and it just looks really, really nice. So as you can see, it's quite a time-consuming part of the build, or part of the weathering process, I should say, but it's well worth the hassle of going and doing it. You don't use a lot of this liquid, but I swear by the Vallejo dark rust. It's just comes up nicely. It's a nice tone to it, nice colorings, and I'll link everything that I've been using in this build. I will link in the description below. So looking back how I've done those techniques, this build is nearly 5 months old now. It's taken me that long to put this video together. I'm quite happy the way that's sort of come up. It's just a matter of just building those colors ever so slightly, particularly the rust colors. Less is more, and just keep building the layers, and you'll get a lovely texture and coloration. So that's the end of video number 1 on basically colouring up. Now, as I said, I don't know what happened with the footage of the build with the pilot, but you can sort of see there some of the texture and colorations. I've done exactly the same techniques I've done there as I did on the hull and the like with sponges, going in with the brush. I'm really happy with the way the boat is, or the ship has come up. So I'll look forward to seeing you on episode 2, where we'll go through the finer details and some of the rigging. So see you next time. Make sure you subscribe. Click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. Support us on Patreon. Like us on Facebook and Instagram at Motoraro Tech.